is it on?
Mm-hmm.
Wait, are we live?
Mm-hmm.
Are we on air?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Hey, nerds. Sup, nerds here. One disclaimer about this sword is, like, this is the way I build my sword. I've made some for some friends. This is not, like, the be-all, end-all way to build a sword. These are not the be-all, end-all materials. This is going to go up on a friend's kind of professional video podcast webpage, so please don't blow up his page with comments about your cover sucks or your tape sucks or this is better, use glue, whatever. Because I don't care, and I'm not going to read them anyway. So don't blow up my friend's thing, all right? Hello, everybody on the internet, and specifically the 2 or 3 people that asked me to make a video for how to build a sword. Coming at you today live, relatively, from the Sup Nerd Studios. Beautiful Sup Nerd Studios in sunny Las Cruces, New Mexico. I think it's like 102 degrees outside right now, and it's a bluebird out there. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over all the materials you're going to need. These are general sword building materials. So the first thing most important thing is foam. There's a few different foams. I use Jewel Spot almost exclusively. If you don't know where to get this stuff or where to order it, you get it on the internet. I think in some bigger towns, if you live in a big town, you can like get this stuff at Lowe's or whatever, or Home Depot. We have to order it on the internet. If one of us remembers, we'll put the link in the description of the video. Second is a core. This is an old piece of 505 kite spar. Again, if you live in a bigger town, you can probably find this stuff at like a kite shop. It's just a fiberglass rod. This method will work with a golf club, a carbon graphite golf club shaft. You'll have to modify it a little bit when you start prepping the core, and I'll tell you when that is. This is a 1/2 inch piece of PVC that I've cut to 10 inches. Actually, it's about 9 inches, I think. You can make larger handles than this. If you have a 36-inch sword and a 24-inch piece of foam, you could have like a foot-long handle. The problem with the longer handles is people end up knuckle racking people a bunch. So, and I've been playing around with smaller handles. I tended for a long time to use about a foot-long handle. Allows you to choke up and stuff like that. But I'm using a smaller handle today. This stuff's also fairly important. This is craft foam with like this weird adhesive backing. It's not weird, it's just adhesive backing. It's got these little papers. You can get this stuff in like bricks of like 100 sheets for like $5 at crafting or like craft supply stores. I think I get this stuff at Target. You can get it. It comes in like this brick of like 100. It's like $5. So you need some of those. You'll need some grip tape of your flavor. Duct tape, just a little bit, not very much. Cover. I'm going to wrap this handle once it's on the sword in 505, or not 550 paracord. Makes the handle a little bigger and a little more, it adds a little more texture to it, so it's, less likely to slide around. You'll need 1 blue foam cap for the end of the sword, and this is the greatest tape of all time. This is United States Postal Service Priority Mail tape. I've heard you can just go on to the USPS website and just get this stuff for free. I tried, I couldn't find it, but the post office guy told me I could. Generally, I just tend to go into the post office and say, hey, I'm going to be shipping a bunch of boxes. Can I buy a couple rolls of this tape? And they tend to just give you a roll. So it's pretty easy to get. You'll need a knife and some scissors too. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put the handle on this core. So you're just going to measure. So you want your handle to go essentially to the end of this, or you want your handle to go to the end of the core. So you can just slide this thing on here like this, kind of press it down to the bottom, and then I've got a Sharpie here to mark where that is. And then what we're going to do is pull that guy off. And this is where the duct tape comes in, because these, they probably make PVC pipe that has a 1/2 inch diameter or inner diameter. I can't find it anywhere, so I just use, I think this has a 3/4 inch inner diameter. So this is where the duct tape comes in. If you've watched like the Warlord Sports sword building video, he does this with his swords as well. And I'm going to start right on that line where the top of the handle is. And you're just going to like put some tape on here, and you're just going to like kind of build up this a little bit. You want to make it snug on the inside of this core. So it usually takes like 3 or 4 wraps around here. And you're probably not going to get this perfect the first time. I have yet to. So you just cut it, rip it, and then just test it. So it's still a little loose, so I'm going to put a little bit more tape on here.
There we go. Just like one more loop around.
Back on, and that seems to be pretty good, if not maybe even a little too much. It was pretty hard to get on there. You can do another piece down here, or do the whole handle. Really, I use this. I don't like if you didn't do this part, you could still just tape the handle to the core, and it would just rattle around a bunch. It still would be pretty good. I use this part to weight the handle end of my sword. So if you want more weight in the handle end, you just add a bunch of tape right here, and it tends to add a bunch of weight. For the purposes of today, though, I'm just going to do this one, just to demonstrate the process, and then you can do 2 or 3 or however many you want. And you go to your sweet, sweet Postal Service tape. We started using this like many moons ago because it was free and it was easy to get. And then we discovered there's some weird specification of this tape that I guess the Postal Service needs, that it stretches this way but doesn't stretch in the long axis of the tape, but stretches in the short axis, which makes it really good for doing like curved surfaces, like when you do the pommel, I'll show you, and you can stretch it sideways. And if you just start taping this son of a bitch down, and then you end up off the edge, I do a bunch of wraps right here, so the edge of this tape is actually off of the handle. And I'm going to do a bunch of wraps right here to build up this part so that it's not going to slide back into the handle. And once I get a good amount of tape on here, probably not a ton or whatever, I'm just going to kind of come back up on the hand, and you can see how it's doing that sideways stretching right here. And then we'll just go back up on, get this taped on real good. It's shitty when your handle comes off, because even if your foam is still good and everything's fine, you still have to tear your sword apart to fix it. So make sure you do this part really well. And there you go. Then you got a handle. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to prep the core for the foam, and we'll just use a little bit of duct tape to put over this kind of, it's not sharp, it's just the edge at the end of this core here. This is where these foamies come in. So what we want to do is when you put the inner diameter of these tubes is said to be 1/2 inch, or maybe it's 5/8 of an inch. And in any case, they're too big for this 1/2 inch kite spar. So if you just put it on like this, you could totally just slam it on here, tape it on, and use your sword. It's going to rattle around a bunch in here. And for every empty space in there when you hit something, so like when you swing your sword, if it can move around inside this hole at all, it's going to slam into these sides, and it's going to like cause premature breakdown of the inside of your foam, which is why when you take swords apart, you'll see the cracks in the foam all come from the inside and radiate outward. That's from the core actually impacting the inside of this foam. So what we're going to do is we're going to attempt to make the diameter of this core the same size as the inner diameter of this hole. And this is not too hard to do. The only complicated part is right here at the beginning. The first time you do this, on the top of your sword, you're going to come about 1/2 inch, maybe a little more than 1/2 inch, off the top. And I'll show you why. And that's the reason we only need one cap. So you just kind of like fiddle with this and measure it. I can just like mark it with my thumbnail. How long you could totally take a tape measure and measure this and do this all like super well, but whatever. So then you just take your scissors and you cut this guy. You can just peel this paper off the back.
Oh no! Okay. Nothing spot here.
So you're going to make sure that that's, half an inch, maybe a little more off the end of your sword. Just kind of like stick the edge as straight as you can get it. Like that. And then you just wrap that guy around. And if you measured it correctly, you can see that these edges meet up pretty well. Now on kite spar, this is really easy to do because the diameter of the cylinder is the same all the way down. On a golf club, you're going to have to do it in shorter increments because the golf club gets larger the farther down the sword you go. So you'll have to do a little bit here and then a little less here and then a little less here as it gets larger and larger. I'm sorry, a little more to get all the way around. And with a golf club, the goal of using this craft foam is to try to make the golf club the same diameter all the way up. So when you get this done, I'm just going to pinch all of this stuff at the top together, and I'll show you why we do that in a minute. First, I'm going to test this. And it's still a little wiggly, but I think if I did another one, it might be too big. So, and you can kind of see, I don't know how well you can see, but this is pretty close to, and when you squeeze this together and tape it, it's going to get, squeezed down a little bit, and so that's pretty good. So what we're going to do now is, and this is the only part of the sword making that I think I'm the only person who does this. All the rest of this stuff is just standard sword building tech. But what we're going to do is we're going to take another piece of this craft foam. But what we're going to do is we're going to come at it from the side, and we're going to get a piece that is the same height as that little nub on the end that we made. So you're going to take it and set your craft foam right at the top of the core, and then mark where the top of that little nub squishy bit is. And then we're just going to cut that.
Assuming someone's cutting and stuff, we can fast forward through the video editing.
But what you're going to want to do here is you're going to take this piece and you'll just press it in here, and then you just start like wrapping it. And you can see the way we start, it's a little tiny bit, but you start wrapping this guy around. And the goal of this is to come up and make this wrap at the top the same diameter as the rest of this core. Even if it's a little bigger, it's not too bad, but you want to really get it the same width as the core. And what this does is it gives you a 1/2 inch plug of foam on the top of this sword that's connected to the core. And in my opinion, this is way better than just topping it and then putting 2 foam caps on top. So we're good there. If you want, you can also continue the craft foam all the way down to the handle. I don't find it particularly necessary, as the vast majority of the sword is going to hit in kind of this area. So I might do a little bit more right here.
I don't want to make a sword that I don't have to remanage or whatever. But yeah, I'll probably just do one sideways length of this again. So we'll just go here, mark it, cut it. Oh god. What? Alright, here we go. So there we go. Just put that guy on there. Doesn't really matter. You don't have to line up the seams or anything. I'm not sure if it's better or worse or whatever. I never do. So you just get that guy on there.
Now we've got the majority of the hitting area of your sword is this foamed, so it's going to fit real snug inside of our blade foam. Like I said, you could do all of it if you wanted. I don't, so I don't know, do whatever you want. The next thing is we're going to measure this. I pre-measured this, so it's pretty perfect already. And I already measured, so this piece of foam is actually 24.5 inches long to account for this 1/2 inch plug at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and slam this guy on here. And it comes pretty close to the edge of this thing. So what we're going to do now is this stuff comes pre-slit. It's pipe insulation, so they need to have a way to get it on the pipes. So it comes with this slit in it that has these little adhesive plastic sides, and you just pull that out, squeeze this guy together, and you could probably preview this if you wanted to. Again, I never do. So now you've got this guy like that. I'm going to shave a little bit off the top here because I don't know how well you can see that, but I got so just a little bit off, maybe 1/4 of an inch too long at the top. And so I'm just going to kind of come in here with a knife. And this is what you got to be really careful when you do this, because if you cut it too deep, your core sticks out, and then you just ruined a piece of foam. I guess you could flip it over, but don't screw it up. So you just kind of shave off some foam here at the top, which is good. It doesn't have to be perfect because, again, you're going to cap it with this blue piece of foam. Now, before you cap it, this is important. So before you cap it, you need to tape the blade foam to the core, because when you do that, it's going to pull this down a little bit. And if you cap it prior to doing that, it's going to create kind of a pressed bulge at the top of your sword, and it's going to also just cause premature, wearing out of the blade. So the way we're going to tape this guy to the core is we're going to get it lined up right here. We're going to start right here at the base. We're going to go around twice, and then we're just going to start slowly working off the edge here toward the core. Now you want to keep pressure on the tape, and I use my thumb to do that. And when you start getting close to the edge, it's going to press over a little bit. It's going to start bending this a little bit, but what it's going to want to do mostly is the tape's just going to want to jump right off the edge here. And what I do is when that starts happening, when I stop with this hand, I will just put my thumb right here and hold it there. And then we'll go again, same thing. Go again, and this is just going to create kind of a nice little lamp. And this is where the weird stretchiness of this tape comes in really handy. And now you're all the way off. So we're going to wrap this a bunch of times down here. This will, if you don't do enough tape right here, this part will definitely separate. The blade will definitely separate from the core and get pulled off here. As you can tell, we're not using any glue. So we'll get that taped on. All right, good. Now you have a handle and a blade. So we'll go ahead and do the top now. With this 1/2 inch piece of foam plus a 1/2 inch plug, you've got your 1 inch at the top. So we'll just go ahead and kind of put that on there. Take these. I thought about pre-cutting all these pieces of tape so I wouldn't have to keep pulling off the roll, but it would totally be an amazing hassle to have to bring 50 cut pieces of tape. So you're going to cross that one, and then you're going to turn it 45 degrees, cross it this way, another 45 degrees back, cross it this way. Now make sure that these pieces of tape are long enough that it tapes this core really well to the side of your foam. If they're really short and they just barely come over, this thing's going to pop off super fast. Alright, so now we've got the top done. So now we're going to start doing the pommel. And the pommel is entirely built out of craft foam. I'll show you how we do that. First thing I'm going to do is get another little piece of duct tape, mustache duct tape, and just put this over. This is just going to prevent kind of any little sharp burrs or something on the PVC or the tight spar from cutting through. It's not a safety thing. It isn't super required. So what we're going to do is this first piece, the first one you do here is going to be, let me see how I can explain this. Alright, so the first piece here is going to dictate how far your pommel comes down onto the handle. So I want my pommel to come down probably 1 inch onto the handle, because it's also going to, remember that when you're done, it's also going to be an inch in the off the end of the core. So if it's an inch on and it comes an inch off, it'll be 2 inches. Your pommel will be 2 inches, and I feel that's generally good enough. So we're going to start by measuring down about an inch, and remembering, just like the top that we did, we're going to come off about 1/2 inch, and we'll cut it there. forgot extra blue foam. You don't happen to have any, do you?
I don't think so.
Hey, all right. Yeah, fuck it. We'll figure it out. Hey, all right. So, once you get this first piece of foam on, you're going to see this hole that's 1/2 inch deep. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this blue foam, you're going to cut a little disc of blue foam that's large enough to fill that hole, you know what I'm saying? Alright, and then you're just going to kind of squeeze it together and just jam it right down in there. Remember that the inside sides of this hole are all sticky, so if you mess this up a couple times, it's going to happen. Now, we have this on here. We've got 1/2 inch from the core outward now. So now what we're going to do is do another wrap, and I'm going to stagger this up farther because I don't want like a fucking 2-inch pommel that's, you know, the whole thing. Pommels are stupid. So I'm going to stagger this up about half the width of the original piece and another 1/2 inch up from the edge.
Peel off this crap, and you just do it again.
Now you're going to cut another piece of blue foam that's going to fit in this now larger hole. I mean, I suppose if you wanted to, you could measure all this stuff and do it. I've made a bajillion swords, so I kind of just have an idea of like how big these pieces need to be. You're just gonna kind of cram that guy in there. Now, you've got something that's this big at this point, and you have 1 inch of foam from the end of your core to the end of your pommel, and this is the end of your pommel. So now all you have to do is decide how thick you want your pommel to be in the Z dimension in this particular case, and just start building it up. I'm going to go about half the width of the last one we did. So I'm going to do that. And on this one, you're going to cut it right at the end here because this is the end of your pommel. So we're just going to cut it, boom, like that.
This is where we're also going to fast forward in the video.
So you just match it up and you just start building this pommel outward until you reach the 2 inches that's required for a pommel.
So again, I'm going to measure that guy, or cut it.
This doesn't matter, this part of it doesn't matter, you're just building outward. And we're going to tape all this stuff down anyway, so if it's a little off or a little wonky, it's okay, because it's all going to get smashed down with tape in a little bit anyway. Now remember also when you're building this outward that you are going to smash this down with tape. So if you get to exactly 2 inches and you tape this fucker down, it's not going to be 2 inches anymore. So you're going to want to go a little bit larger than 2 inches. That's what she said. So now we're done building out. Now as you can notice, this thing's wobbly a little bit because of the way we kind of tiered it out, which is why you have to tape it down. So we're going to get our tape, and we're going to essentially kind of do exactly what we did with the top. Let's cross it there. Cross it here. We don't have to like do all 6 pieces of tape because the pommel doesn't take a beating. So you just kind of smash that stuff down, and then what I'm going to do is come with this tape and start at the top edge and just kind of wrap it around. And this is just making sure that the pommel, we're not torque wrapping this at all. It's just kind of making sure that the pommel is very well attached to the handle. All right, now Now you see that doesn't wobble around anymore. And there's your pommel. It's really good. It's perfectly legal, and they're really sturdy because you use this the craft foam. It's not sturdy enough to be illegal, but it's much sturdier than using a piece of this foam and then trying to figure out all that crap. Right now, so you essentially basically have a sword. I'm going to demonstrate and talk when I do the first couple of these, and then I'll do them all, and then we'll just fast forward to that part. So we're going to, I don't know, they call this skinning it or like covering it with tape, whatever you want to call it. So this foam, I'm sure everybody's heard the term open cell, closed cell, microcellular foam. Those cells refer to the little air bubbles that are created when you make this foam. Now, the reason blade foam breaks down over time is because when you hit somebody with your sword, some of those little bubbles break, and the air escapes, and it gets smaller and squishier and squishier and squishier, and then it blows out. This process of essentially just measuring out the length of the blade. Some people do this in a spiral wrap. I don't like that as much because if you don't do it super correctly, it will tear at the little spiral edges. And I've never had that happen when I use this method. So you're going to go from like one end to the other. And you're just going to start a piece. Try to get as few bubbles in it as you can. It's not a big deal if you get bubbles or wrinkles. The biggest, most important part of doing this is right here. What you want is a good overlap of the two pieces. So you're going to get your second piece. And this tape is another phenomenal attribute of this tape is that you see these little red squares. I go right to the edge of there, and that gives you like 3/4 of an inch of overlap. And what this does, what skinning the sword in tape does, is if you get a good enough seal, if you get a good enough overlap and everything, it prevents when those bubbles break. It may prevent the breakage of some of the bubbles, I'm not sure, but what it does do for sure is when the bubbles do break, it prevents a lot of the escape of the air that was in those bubbles and will make your swords last way longer. So do this step. Now I'm going to do the rest of it, and we're going to fast forward hopefully to some sweet like Benny Hill style music with like a little thing to it. Oh, one important part too is if you notice the split end, the split in this foam, make sure you do that part really well. And if you want, you can even put a little pressure horizontally on that. So like start on one side of it and then kind of pull your tape across that split. That will prevent that split from opening up. And I've seen a lot of swords that use drill spot where they'll hit somebody and you can obviously tell something's wrong with the sword. And what happened is that split opened up and the core actually just went into it. And that's real bad. So just make sure you do the split real well. Alright, so when you get to the end of this, if you just, because of the way, some stuff works, you can, I don't know how well you can see that, but you can see the overlap here, and it's not very much. Like, less, maybe 1/4 of an inch. So what I'm going to do is if you just don't think it's enough, slide another piece of tape right over the top of that. Because of all of the sword making procedures, the one that's going to make your sword last the longest is this step right here. So I'm just going to put another piece of tape over it. One thing I do, you don't necessarily have to do this. I'm just going to come, because there's a lot of ends of the tapes right here, loose ends. We'll call them loose ends. And I'm just going to go right to the edge. Get this a wrap around it. And there you go. And the sword is essentially done. So the rest of this is, I'm going to wrap this handle real quick. And I can again, I'm going to talk about it at the beginning, and then we can just fast forward through a lot of this crap. Oh no, what have I done? Or we're going to fast forward through the part where I untangle my paracord. This part, I'm going to use a couple little pieces of tape. You don't have to do this. A lot of people will find that the 1/2-inch PVC is definitely large enough for their hand. The problem with much smaller handles than this is it creates a lot of torque in your elbow when you squeeze this handle for long periods of time. And I find with handles that are any smaller than this 1/2-inch PVC, it really hurts my elbow after a day of fighting. And I do prefer a larger handle, so I'm going to make it a little larger with this paracord. You just get a couple little mustaches here. And I'm just going to start right about the base of where our pommel kind of is the same diameter of the core. Just tape that bad boy down. And then just start a wrapping. Parappa the wrapping. You do, like, if you're going to do this, you're going to want to try to keep this as tight as possible. I'm kind of putting quite a bit of tension here, and I'm pressing it down and up with this finger. It keeps it from getting gaps between the two. If you do find it gets loose and you just didn't notice it, and you have a bunch of like gapping and stuff here, you can just like start on one end and just twist it with your hand this direction, and it'll tighten it back up. But if you get this right the first time, it works real well. Alright, once you get to the end, there's a bunch of extra because I took this piece of cord off a sword that I had a longer handle on. So you just cut it, and you just tape it down. There. Now, the next step is you're gonna, oh fuck, I fucked up. So what you should have done is cover your pommel in cloth tape before you did the cord. That way the ends of the tape down here would be under this cord, because you're never going to have to change this pommel. It's going to last way longer than the blade. But I didn't do that, so I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to get yelled at by our GMR for running around with a pommel with a red and white, or a sword with a red and white pommel, but that's okay. Our GMR is small. So what I'm going to do now is just go ahead and finish. I'm going to cover this paracord stuff with this tape, and I'm going to start at the bottom. And here is a pro tip. If you start at the bottom and finish at the top with this, when your blade blows out, you don't have to pull the whole thing off. You can just start where you finished and kind of come down to about half the handle. And so you only have to pull off half the tape and half the cord to replace the blade. I made about 5 swords and had to take them all apart when the blade blew out before I realized that this would work. So I'll just cut that like that. And so there's your handle, essentially fully done. And then you're going to take this cover. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I got it. Don't say anything about the goddamn cover, alright. And what I do is take a piece of this cloth tape. Whoop. And tear it in half. You don't really need the other half, so I'm probably just going to throw it away. But a lot of people will just pull this down and then tape it around, which leaves kind of a weird little skirt thing on everybody's swords, which I'm not a super fan of. You could also, before you do this part, do the cover and then tape that tape over the end of this. I'm not a super fan of that either, because of your cover tears, which is when you use shitty covers like this, it happens. So if you need to replace the cover before you need to do anything else, It's way easier if it's on top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it down a little bit, and then I'm just going to kind of twist it around like this, which does this. And then I'm going to take my little half a piece of tape here and just kind of go around like this. And there you go. You just made a sword. Sweet, sweet sword. Also by Warlord Sports.